Hi guys, I am Shane Galea, your leading property development expert for your property development needs. In today's My Development podcast, let's talk about critical tips for choosing your next property development architect. A licensed architect, whose duty is to assist you in designing a building plan that corresponds to the local council's rules, is one of the essential professionals to have on board during a project development process. In the construction industry, architects ensure that property developers do not exceed their budgets to ensure that the property is architecturally acceptable. If your architect is familiar with the rules, the council, and what passes muster, it can speed up the development finance and application process while saving you money. You should evaluate a few professionals knowledgeable about the location you're investing in to find the best architect for your development project. Every architect possesses their design style, approach, and working methods. As a result, finding an architect that knows your goals and taste is essential. If you've previously worked with a certain architect and are satisfied with the results, it's a good idea to contact them again. If not, you'll need to conduct some research. First, consider your development project goals and requirements, such as: do you require more space? What kinds of activities will take place in the space? What is your budget for the project? How are you going to pay construction costs? What city will it be in? Will you be doing any of the work yourself? Don't worry if you don't know everything. If required, the architect can assist you in clarifying your objectives. What is property development? Property development encompasses various activities and procedures, from land acquisition to construction and development. Continual remodeling of the built environment to satisfy society's demands is one meaning of property development. Who is a property development architect? Architects are taught to conceive in terms of building places rather than separate objects from their environment. An architect developer is equipped to think about how a project will fit into and interact with its surroundings, assuring long-term value for themselves, clients, and the surrounding communities. Architects are trained about urbanism and how to spot a possible development potential. They may, for example, sense potential in a vacant property that appears to be worthless to the ordinary eye. What is the role of the architect? Architects design buildings, most individuals would readily and correctly say. A competent architect, on the other hand, does much more. A professional architect can work with all of your designers, aid with town planning, and even manage the construction activities of your project. In reality, they'll likely be associated with, while operating on your project, choosing a site, studies of feasibility, planning and designing, managing the construction budget, choosing and supervising the project team, interior design, design of the landscape. Not every architect will take on complete project management, but some will be eager and ready to oversee the entire project from the start till the end. In the end, your demands will be best addressed if you gain all of the essential abilities to run your projects personally, or if you hire a project manager instead of an architect to steer the development. Project managers are more practical and budget conscious, whereas architects are more creative and innovative. A good project manager will also free up your time, and then you can concentrate on discovering the next great property development or investment for your portfolio. Tips for choosing a property development architect. As a project manager, here are factors to consider and access while picking someone to fill the architect's role of your property development architect's work. Begin compiling a list of possible architects. Make a call to each of the architects on your list. Interview. Making a decisive decision. Determining the services you require. Decisions that matter. Providing remuneration to your architect. Teamwork. Get it down on paper. Begin compiling a list of possible architects. Figure out who designed the architectural design you appreciate in your neighborhood. Ask relatives, friends, or colleagues who have collaborated with architects for suggestions. Verify that an architect is a fellow of the Australian Institute of Architects, AIA. The architect's membership in the AIA entails adhering to a code of ethics and accessing various technical and professional resources. Make a call to each of the architects on your list. Pitch your project to them and see if they are interested in taking it on. Ask for details about the architect's experience and qualifications if they are. Once an architect cannot manage your project, inquire if they can recommend someone else. A letter of interest, fact sheets, brochures, biographical material about key employees, and images of previous work may be among the materials you get from prospective architects. To find out which architect does have the necessary experience and expertise for your project, examine further than the brochure's aesthetic. You must limit your choices to 2 or 3 architects to interview at this time. Interview. The interview is essential because it allows you to meet and interact with the people who will design your projects and determine whether you have a good working relationship. Keep in mind that you'll be working with the architect for quite some time. You want to be with someone who makes you feel at ease. The interview should last at least 1 hour. It's possible that the meeting is scheduled in the architect's office, which is advantageous because you'll be able to view where the project will be completed. Alternatively, the interview can occur at your workplace or home, which is beneficial because the architect can discover more about your demands and project. The architect might present you with slides or images of previous projects and explain how their technical knowledge and experience would benefit you. Most architects do not charge for this interview, but some do. Ask whether there is a price before the interview. At the interview, inquire about the architect's or firm's workload and other crucial questions like: is it capable of taking on your project? Who will be in charge of the project? Make a point of meeting the individual who will be working on your project. What is the design model of the firm? What method does the architect have in mind for your project? How enthusiastic is the firm about your project? Discuss your budget and determine how much the architect expects to charge for your design. Make the designers show you to one completed building before deciding. It is essential to request recommendations from previous clients from your architect. These references are priceless. Making a decisive decision. Ultimately, you will pick an architect with confidence and who you believe is the best fit for the project. Unlike buying a new appliance or a car, you won't be able to view and test the completed result. The architect does not sell a product, instead, they offer professional services. The ideal architect will provide the technical competence, judgment, and intellectual prowess needed to help you achieve a project that meets both your practical and aesthetic needs. Determining the services you require. Although you may already know the professional services needed for your project, most project managers or property owners prefer to collaborate with their architects to determine what is required. Various projects necessitate combinations of architectural services, including interior architecture. One of the first tasks is determining which services are fundamental to the project's success. Decisions that matter. Most projects necessitate various foundational services commonly provided by architects, including design proposal, design documents, preliminary designs, preparation of construction documents, design development, administration of the agreements between you and your contractor or builder, and assistance in the negotiation or bidding process. Other services will be required for some projects. For example, pre-design work that may be required. Buildings programming. Assessments of existing structures. Economic and marketing achievability studies. Budgeting and financing bundles. Location and utility analyses. Environmental analysis. Prepping and zoning applications. Prepping of materials for public referenda. Energy analysis, special cost, tenant-related design, special designs, presentations, and models may be required for certain projects. The architect is not required to supply all services. Some owners have extensive project design, planning, and construction experience and may complete some project responsibilities on their own. Others believe it is beneficial or necessary to bring in additional consultants to help with specific responsibilities. It will be required to discuss who will oversee owner-supplied services or others that are not covered by the architect's agreement. Providing remuneration to your architect. Architect charges are often set at the start of a project and are commonly calculated as a percentage of the overall cost. The Institute of Architects sets a general fee scale for them. Once it pertains to architectural services, you often get what you pay for, like with any. Payments to the architect are generally made in sequels throughout the project, with the first payment coming at concept plan, a second payment is due occurring upon lodgement of the development application, the town planning drawings to the council, and a third installment occurring upon designing the working drawings. If the property council forces the architect to make changes, they may charge an additional cost. How much should I budget for an architect's services? Architectural services should be factored into your budget. The degree and type of professional services supplied will determine this. More comprehensive services and a more sophisticated or adventurous project will necessitate more effort from the architect and increase the project's value. And what are the options for remuneration? These are the most prevalent. The architect's remuneration proposal determines a fixed amount. A certain amount per unit, dependent on what will be built. A proportion of the total cost of building. Rates based on the hour. A mixture of the preceding. Teamwork. The best building projects are developed when the architect and the client work collectively. Participate in the process. Don't assign decision-making to a business partner or spouse unless you are willing to deal with the consequences. The building design is an interesting and creative task. The design procedure can be enjoyable, positive, fulfilling, and it can also be taxing. Communicate your reservations with your architect if you are dissatisfied at any point during the design process. You don't want the architect to have so much control over the project that the building is no longer yours. However, you must be careful not to place so many restrictions on the architect that you do not receive your money's worth regarding design innovation. Get it down on paper. You're ready to put the conditions of your contract on the scope of work, schedule, services, construction budget, and architect's remuneration in writing once you've selected the right architect. This written agreement might come in a variety of formats. The Australian Institute of Architects has created several standard contract forms widely used in the construction industry. The architectural brief. After you've chosen your architect, you'll need to give them a brief. The brief should include information on the type of project you desire, its overall shape, and the number of units you want to build, as well as some broad design features like the materials you want to employ. After reviewing your design brief, the architect will visit the site to establish the best orientation and location for your project by clarifying the town planning zoning for your land, assessing its conditions and limits, and determining the ideal orientation and location. They will confer with the council's town planners if required to acquire a thorough understanding of the local authority's planning needs. Following these first processes, the architect should create a basic concept sketch to show the number and types of dwellings that the land can support. They then send these pre-designed drawings for your review and suggestions, which normally comprise a preliminary floor plan and one elevation. Because you'll have a better notion of what you'll be capable of building on your site after looking at these early designs, you'll be able to conduct a complete feasibility study. After you've approved the concept designs, the architect will hire a surveyor to create a feature survey of the site and its environs, allowing them to finish the town planning drawings. You may want to choose building materials at this point. Once your planning permit or development application has been accepted, the architect will provide working drawings that, when paired with the structural, engineering, and civil engineering drawings, will allow you to get a building permit as well as any necessary construction estimates. These drawings are extremely detailed, with all dimensions, ceiling heights, and levels depicted. Locations of windows and doors, plumbing, material finishes, chimneys, and the precise location of the water heating and cooling systems, if applicable. Your builder will use these working drawings to determine cost estimations. Property development planning regulations differ from council to council. It's simple to get a version of your local authority's development requirements, and you must study them well before paying for any designer to ensure that it meets their requirements and is suitable for the area in which your property development is located. When examining the site, your architect must consider all of the council's requirements as well as any distinctive shapes or barriers that may limit your property development. When it comes to laying out your project, the architect will typically start from the front setback from the block, which is governed by the planning regulations and affected by the setbacks of your immediate neighbors. They make an area for garages, driveways, and wheeling circles and ensure that vehicles may leave the property in a forward direction. Then, depending on the council, they will assign the required quantity of reserved open space for each house. They can establish the layout for your residences after all of these factors have been taken into account. Design traps to avoid. Although you may have a certain vision for your development, it's essential to keep an objective eye on the design and style of your project. Many aspiring developers become engrossed in their preferences and fail to prepare correctly for their target audience and follow local zoning regulations. Below are some design traps to stay away from at all costs. Many would-be developers believe that if other developments were established on the street, they would create similar projects. This isn't always the case, as planning regulations change with time, and it's conceivable that you wouldn't be able to build a 2-unit structure next door to one that was authorized by the council a few years back. Make sure your site has enough room for the intended development, along with all outdoor spaces, parking, wheeling circles, and roadways. Sites with uneven boundaries or odd setback requirements should be avoided since they may limit the number of residences you can build. Choose a level site whenever possible, as high slopes might result in significant footing designs and excavation costs. If possible, find a location where your neighbors will applaud your decision to demolish the residential property and improve the streetscape. New developers should avoid local residents with a history of opposing residential projects and developments. Frequently asked questions. 1. What is the difference between an architectural designer and an architect? The term architectural designer refers to not being a professional architect and has not undergone the registration exam. In contrast, an architect is a trained professional who has passed through architecture school and undergone the Architects Accreditation Council of Australia, AACA. 2. What is the difference between an architect and interior designer? An architect is a schooled professional licensed to design and develop buildings, while an interior designer uses a professional artistic ability to repurpose and remodel interior spaces, collaborating with clients to develop something both beautiful and functional. 3. What is the average time it takes to become an architect? Given the program and curriculum length, architectural studies in Australia might take anywhere from 5 to 7 years to complete. Architectural students must take practice exams and register as architects after having at least 2 years of experience in the profession, in addition to the extensive coursework and time commitment. 4. Do civil engineers and architects work together? The civil engineer and the architect are the principal designers of a project, and both professions are crucial to the building's implementation and construction. Their tasks frequently overlap. 5. Should an architect be able to build a structure? A building's design, implementation, and successful completion are all the responsibilities of an architect. Because architects are responsible for the welfare, and well-being of a building's occupants, they must have extensive construction knowledge. Anyone who plans a building without having any construction experience is referred to as a designer or an artist, not an architect. 6. How does it feel to be an architect? Architecting can be a difficult and competitive profession. University will not provide you with all you need to learn, but it will help you build your creative abilities and broaden your horizons. When you begin working in the sector, you will educate about architecture's technical and business sides. You'll make valuable contacts and build partnerships with clients, engineers, and contractors. Thanks for listening to the My Development podcast, brought to you by Shane Galea, your property expert guide for your property needs.